Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is One of One, but you can call me Seven. And look, we've returned to Witch on the Holy Night after I think it's been 3 weeks since I published a Witch on the Holy Night video. I fell into some other holes, okay? Namely Dark Souls. Dark Souls was remastered and Dark Souls 2, and I couldn't stop playing. But I'm back for the visual novel that we have been playing together, and now we're gonna continue. So I think last time Sojiro, was shirtless and super duper ripped and scarred, if I remember correctly, and Alice and Alco were like, what do we do? And I think they were gonna go check on the sigils in the park where they encountered that puppet the first night that Sojiro saw them. So, because their domain is being encroached upon and they're trying to figure out who's doing what. Because now their life with Sojiro has started, I mean, it's begun at the very least, because Alice, I still don't know how she really feels about him. It's still kind of hard because she's kind of hard to read, but we're figuring that out too, so let's just get going. Early the next morning, it was 5 o'clock in the morning. Most people were still in their beds sleeping. Although some 24-hour convenience stores had opened last year, Misaki Town was still very much living in the good old days of the early 80s. Oh, what a time to be alive, huh? Even the tofu shop in the shopping district, known for opening earlier than anywhere else, didn't open until 6. But this was the late 80s, during the latter half of Japan's bubble economy. It was a time when metropolitan areas never slept. Those in the countryside, however, remained in the past. The homes were blanketed in silence, the streets were empty of commuters, and not a single automobile could be heard. The sun was just barely peeking over the horizon, and the town would still be asleep for at least an hour longer before it began waking up. It was during this time that someone stepped onto the Kuonji estates. Sojiro was working the late shift during winter vacation and had just come home. Oh, okay, it's Sojiro. Jeez, I was concerned for a second there. I thought we were getting some action. Though maybe it would be nice to get some action soon. I said that it's been a while since, I think I said recently that it's been a while since we got some of the actual magic stuff. But, you know, I've been pretty happy with what's been going on with Alice, Alco, and Sojiro, so, you know, whatever. He moved quietly through the drawing room so he wouldn't wake up Alco and Alice, who were presumably still asleep. The Kuonji state had a few established rules. One of those rules forbade more Japanese tea? This new rule had only come into effect 3 days prior. It was proposed after Alice saw Sojiro drinking green tea in the kitchen after dinner one night. Huh?
Oh?
What? Huh? What's the issue? Looking back on it, the decision had been made rather abruptly. That single gasp of surprise was all Alice said. She grasped her head as if she was battling the most vicious of migraines, called for Alco, and then made the decision to ban all Japanese teas from this mansion? By some miracle, Alco managed to negotiate and keep Sojiro's privileges to barley tea during the summer. Even the British only drank green tea at first, you know. Alco had clearly hit a nerve with this argument. Alco stared at Alice, fairly certain why she was so taken aback by Sojiro's actions. I don't get why it's such a big deal. Tea is good no matter what kind it is, Sojiro grumbled to himself while sipping his hot green tea. He didn't realize that Alice was upset because he had poured his green tea into a teacup meant for black tea. Oh, we're still struggling with this, are we? Why isn't anybody teaching him? Come on now. Yeah, and Sojiro's defense was the only teacup that Alice had given him permission to use. At any rate, the early morning was his to enjoy. This was his moment to relax with a Japanese tea set he'd smuggled in. He didn't use this time to read books or watch TV. He just drank his tea and gazed fondly at the garden, or rather, the dense woods outside. Sojiro simply sat, relaxed, and let his mind wander. Oh, how nice. Oh, we haven't heard this version of the song yet. It's like a theme, a version of a theme from a kid's show that you'd hear when the characters go into a jungle. That's really specific, but do you know what I'm talking about, guys? Maybe I'm crazy. About an hour passed, and he heard sounds coming from the foyer. Fellas, hide your shit, man. Hiding the contraband was easy enough considering just how many unused shelves there were in the kitchen. Sojiro was perturbed by how they wasted the potential of such a splendid kitchen. But yeah, neither of them cooked very much at all. You're up early. Alco took off her hello. Just got home. Food factory over. Oh my god. He's picked up another job? The late shift at a food factory over in Amagihama. There we go. About to put on some water to boil. Tilted her head slightly at him. It wasn't that she thought his gesturing was funny or anything like that. Alice glanced up at the clock in the drawing room and her expression darkened. What's wrong, Alice? Nothing. She responded indifferently before finally sitting down as well. 1 spoon of sugar. Aoko yelled her out of course request into the kitchen. Sojiro didn't respond, but it was an affirmative silence. This was the result of 2 entire nights worth of cramming that Alice knew nothing about. What about you, Alice? Mine with milk. She responded out of obligation. Tea with milk. For some reason, Sojiro dutifully answered Alice's request. Fine. I get sick of his voice if he replied every time anyway. Rare for you to be drinking tea from a tea bag. So we're back in on our slice of life shit, huh? At this point, guys, I feel like I'm just letting this visual novel drag me wherever they take me. We've had a lot of exposition and a lot of explanation, and now we know the stakes, and we know we know what the problems our characters face, what those problems are. But I feel like we're just living. I don't know. That's just me. Okay, so Sojiro, didn't you say something weird earlier? Didn't think so. Could have sworn you said something. Alice decided to add her opinion to the conversation. I don't think a day has ever gone by when he hasn't said something weird, to be honest. Her quiet tone was luckily just low enough that Sojiro couldn't hear her from the kitchen. Wasn't he talking kind of strangely? Don't know how to describe it. Something seemed off about what he was saying. Amagihama? Is that where he was? And then he appeared holding a tray with a teacup for each of them. I literally just said I started a new part-time job, that's all. He put the cups down on the black table without making even the slightest sound. Alice couldn't complain about how proper his job as a waiter had made him. While she didn't say anything out loud, she did nod in his direction to show some gratitude. Aoko, however. There's a huge stadium over there that I go to sometimes when a band I like is on tour. Oh, she loved rock bands. Oh, hell yeah. That makes her based. She's great. Look at her. Aoko was secretly obsessed with a number of bands and used to travel way out of town just to see them perform live when she was in middle school. Of course, this was a world that Sojiro was far from familiar with. Started yet another part-time job. What are you trying to accomplish by working that hard? I have to work more because there are a couple of people in my life who like to take all my money from me for every little thing you can imagine. This was as much resistance as Sojiro was able to give. Aoko lifted her teacup to her mouth as if she was completely oblivious to Sojiro's monologue. Oh, dude, that's crazy. Anyway. For some things she just did not understand. Aoko had to hold back her laughter. She looked at Alice and Sojiro. I should have known better than to say anything. Sojiro's shoulders fell as he said this. He took a sip of his black tea, still unsure about the taste. As long as you know I'm working a lot, I guess that's fine. That means I'll also be away at night during winter vacation. I'll have to take those pills at work, though. You're done with those? They were a pain to make, and I found something more suitable for you anyway. Why is the music quieting down? A huge ominous grin. She pulls out a little paper bag, small circular object about 20 inches diameter wrapped up nicely like a present. Celebrate your moving in here. I want you to wear that from now on. Open the paper bag, and inside was a white belt, but it wasn't a belt for putting around your waist to keep your pants up. To put it as clearly as possible, it was a collar. Aoko. Oh, the way she said that was like, oh my god, Aoko. It wasn't clear whether it was her friend's insidiousness or sympathy for Sojiro that concerned her. What do you think? Aoko was clearly a little crazy. At least she wasn't totally serious. It was obvious that it was at least half a prank just to see how Sojiro would react. But Sojiro was solemnly considering the collar he had just been gifted. I'm not exactly sure what this means, but it's the first time anyone has given me something like this. He actually sounded like this would be a happy memory for him. Alice narrowed her eyes at what was transpiring. What exactly am I supposed to use this for? It's simple. It's like the golden headband in Journey to the West. Wukong had to wear it if he stepped out of line, though this you wear around your neck like a dog collar. Sojiro grimaced when he finally understood Aoko's mean-spirited gift. He really wanted to ask her what kind of person comes up with such an evil idea. So basically, if I divulge any secrets or disobey you, then that collar will choke me, is that right? Are you sure you're feeling well, Ozaki? Oh, do you not like it? I tried to pick out what I thought would suit you best. Aoko still had an evil... That's so mean! Sojiro had a surprising response to this gift that Aoko had clearly gotten as a prank. I guess you're right. I mean, it's better than taking poison every day, and the belt itself looks well made. I actually like it. Thank you, Ozaki. Hey, Ozaki, there are plenty of people in this world who would react just this way to you giving them a collar. I'm sure of it. He spoke 100% truthfully. That's what you get, girly pop. That's what you get. Ako's face contorted in disbelief, and she could only mumble if he was serious. I mean, it is a freak thing to say. I'm happy about any act of kindness, even more so when it's from you, Aozaki. And with that, Sojiro put the belt around his neck. He placed it over the bandages already there. I guess this works. It's a little tight, but I'm sure I'll get used to it. Despite his words to the contrary, Sojiro tugged at the belt uncomfortably and adjusted it. It was such a perverse scene that even Aoko's face was red as a beet, even though this had all been her idea. Perhaps it was because it gave her such a clear reminder of the scar she had seen the day before. Oh, right. Okay. Is it on right? Aoko retreated guilty as Sojiro came closer for her to check the fit of his new collar. Oh my god! If you don't say anything, how will I know if it fits right? It's okay, I'll just ask Alice. Sojiro shifted his gaze from Aoko to Alice. Alice stared intently at Sojiro wearing his new collar and said, Punk rock. Hmm? Aoko, stop trying to dress him how you want him to look. She could not have put it any more bluntly. Shut up! That's not what I was trying to do! Just ignore her. From now on, that collar will replace those pills I was giving you. Don't you go divulging any of our secrets. And there she goes, stomping off toward the hallway. I'm gonna take a nap until lunch. If you wake me up for any stupid reason, I will murder you. And there we go. Good job, guys. I'll never understand why she gets so mad like that all of a sudden, he murmured to himself, forgetting that Alice was standing right there in front of him. I assume it's because her ill intent doesn't seem to get through to you. I wouldn't worry about it if I were you. Ill intent? What? Just now? Alice looked up at Sojiro's innocent response. There was a glimmer in her eyes that showed surprise at her current actions. It's nothing. Don't worry about it. With that terse reply, she returned to her usual, expressionless self. There was no use explaining Aoko's feelings. You can't just explain a tsundere away like that, guys. Come on now. Aoko bought that collar for the sole purpose of annoying Sojiro and causing mischief. When things didn't turn out how she'd planned, her conscience got the better of her. Sojiro mistakenly thought that Aoko was angry at him, when in reality she was only angry at herself. Alice didn't bother telling Sojiro all these heartwarming details, though. Not because it was too much work, just because she was never one to have meaningless conversation. That was how she had been raised. So what are your plans? Alice suddenly changed the topic. They're talking. This is cordial and civil. I'm just going to relax until the evening. I've been way too busy recently. Watch some TV. Now, since we have to wake up Aozaki at lunchtime, right? Keep it quiet then. And off she goes. Sojiro would understand exactly what she meant by those words in just a few minutes. This is concerning. What do you mean by that? Narrator, game, me, hello? All right, 9 o'clock, about time for the morning television programs to get going. And we got more scene setting. Courtyard looks bad, wild state. Do something about that sometime soon. Turning another page in his textbook. Oh, her notes in his textbook. Got it. He appeared to be a diligent student studying on his day off. He was in truth only doing so as a compromise. He had given up on his main intent of watching the morning television shows. The reason why he gave up was simple. He was being considerate of Alice, who sat in front of him with her nose buried in a book. I see. Instead of holding herself up in her room, she'd brought out her old dusty books to read. This is what she meant when she had said to keep quiet. Sojiro found it difficult to turn on the TV. Yeah, you don't do it, man. It's not worth it. I guess I won't be watching TV for a while, and it's time for you to review your practice problems, brother. In the drawing room, for some reason, there wasn't any particular purpose in doing it there, but he also had no real reason to study back up in his room. And so there he was, leisurely highlighting his textbook with Alice there in the same room. To Sojiro, there was really no difference between his room in the attic and the drawing room with Alice. To be fair, he could probably live with a tiger as long as it didn't cause any trouble. That was both Sojiro's biggest strength and his biggest weakness. Before he knew it, the clock was showing 11, 2 hours doing his math problems, but wasn't even halfway finished. Oh god, rip. He was disappointed in himself for lacking the courage to speak up at all to turn on the TV. And Aozaki's is really working hard. He dropped his mechanical pencil into the notebook and watched it roll away. He knew that Aoko and Alice were busy with something since final exams had ended. He also knew that she had hardly gotten any sleep recently. If she'd been able to ignore him during exams, she probably would have had an easier time. First proper sleep Aoko had gotten in days, though she showed no signs of exhaustion despite the fact that she must have hit peak long ago. She always seemed raring to go. It wasn't that she was trying to act tough. That was just the kind of person she was. Always positive, always tough as nails. Hell yeah. And that was exactly why she came off as completely irrational at times. But if that was the case, you could probably describe Alice in exactly the same way. Sojiro couldn't help but feel a bit inadequate when he saw their single-minded focus on their goals. He'd been so preoccupied with adjusting to his new life that he'd neglected to think about what he was going to do with himself after. If there is going to be an after. He'd never find a clear purpose in life like Alco and Alice seemed to have. Oh, buddy. At least not since he left the mountains. His old life was gone now, never to return. He was like a kite cut from its string, destined to fly only where the winds took it. And without anything to ground him, he couldn't do anything about the empty future that lay ahead. He could only let himself fly where the currents took him, slowly losing sight of the ground below. Oh, buddy, nothing you truly desire, even though you're surrounded by convenience? Oh man, dude, you are living that city. Oh my god, that city life, that capitalist life, goddamn. The same question never made him feel any better. It only made you, of course, you're doom spiraling a little bit, brother. Maybe he felt that lamenting his own ineptitude would lead to finding some kind of goal or desire someday. Aw, guy, come on. His new collar was there around his neck, looking as out of place as ever. Perhaps a fool like him who felt weak when faced with other strengths did need to wear a collar after all. Oh. Shouldn't worry about this till I'm actually an adult. Shook off his thoughts of doom and gloom and sat up straight. He's gonna stand up from the sofa. I'm gonna make some food. You want anything? While Sojiro had been doing his own thing, he had remained mindful of Alice. Alice looked up, surprised at hearing her name. She had completely forgotten Sojiro was even there. Me? Yes, you. You've only had some tea all morning. If I'm going to be cooking, I might as well cook for everyone. Without waiting for her to reply, Sojiro headed off to the kitchen while putting on his apron. Alice tried to wave at him to stop, but by then he'd already disappeared into the kitchen. I like the way that, they make the movements. So for Alice specifically, it's just like the way that she puts her hand up on it. She's like, She was hesitant to walk all the way in there just to tell him she didn't need anything. And besides, she was actually hungry. Empty stomach agreed. Alice was hungry and Sojiro was going to make lunch. Making lunch for both of them would save the time and the trouble of cooking 2 separate meals. There was no logical reason for Alice to refuse his gesture. There you go. Stay quiet. Tacitly accept his offer. Oh, he's so strange. I love her. Oh, she's great. She whispered the words softly, not for anyone in particular to hear, but herself. There we go. The truth was, however, Alice had been in a bad mood all morning. Is this going to have to do with, the sigils? After checking all the sigils around Misaki City and boarding the first train back from Tokawa, all she wanted to do was spend the rest of her day reading until the words turned into a jumble. Her iron resolve to complete this task would not be interrupted by someone else milling about in the drawing room. This was her mansion, and there was no way she was going to lock herself up in a room on account of Sojiro. However, with that said, she knew it would be wrong to kick him out for no real reason. As it stood, Sojiro had actually kept quiet like she'd asked. It wasn't in the wrong here. If Alice had really wanted to be alone, she would have gone to her room. I should have told him to leave me alone instead of just telling him to be quiet. Alice had defiantly stayed in the drawing room despite realizing the dilemma she'd put herself in. Oh my god, it's just the two of them just doing this. Just both of them not being able to communicate with each other because, well, I don't know, it's because of their personalities, to be honest with you. And how standoffish Alice is and how silly Sojiro is. He might make a ruckus and run off to his room, but he's super considerate. He's a good guy. Though he hadn't paid her any attention, he hadn't ignored her either. They had simply sat in silence together without any awkwardness. That's a really nice feeling. Alice felt the freedom of being alone, along with the comfort of someone being by her side. To put it into words, Sojiro was just that kind of person. He's just that kind of guy. He's a fella. It's probably the only reason Alice had been able to sleep so soundly with him there next to her. Oh yeah, I remember that. Sojiro continued cooking in the kitchen, oblivious to the thoughts that went through Alice's head, and she couldn't see him from the drawing room, but she could easily imagine him cooking in the kitchen. You keep saying that. Stating her feelings out loud a second time. You keep saying that, dude. Tell us how you really feel, girly. And there we go, 2 sets of plates. Some food of an indescribable color was piled on the large cream-colored plates. Sojiro? This is... She hadn't expected much. And since she hadn't requested anything, she could just refuse if it was something she didn't want. I thought Sojiro could cook. What? What's happening here? This food left her at a loss for words despite psyching herself up? What? Look at the way she's hiding! What is this? Alice spoke as though she was terrified of what had been placed before her. Huh? I just put some stuff on top of stir-fried udon noodles. If Alco had been there, she probably would have punched him. But Sojiro just confidently placed the 2 large plates on the table! Like an angry volcano ready to erupt at any moment, the thick mystery sauce flowed over the plates as magma might from said eruption, and below it all were a seemingly infinite number of slimy tentacle. Come on. Why do you gotta describe the udon like that? I really like udon, all right? Really nothing to say about it. Nothing more to say. This was clearly the food of a poor... a poor, struggling student who favored quantity over quality. All that was required was a basic recipe, the will to cook something, and what few ingredients were needed. The pile of stir-fried noodles with sauce slathered on top was so horrifically bad, it was almost an art form. This was a bachelor's cooking, if she'd ever seen it. There was really nothing else you could call it. Oh, God, he's doing for an hour in there, and it turned out he'd been making this sauce. No sauce would have been fine, but Sojiro had wholeheartedly gone the extra mile. It's time to eat. Itadakimasu! The trembling fork! Sojiro began eating, not seeming to care that Alice sat there looking like she was about to eat poison. Seeming to view this as a challenge, Alice furrowed her brow and slowly brought the massive noodles to her mouth. It was a little salty and ugly to look at, but it didn't taste all that bad. If anything, it was actually pretty good. Hey, that's what we're looking for. So, I want to ask you something. Sojiro put down his chopsticks and turned to speak to Alice. Be honest with me. Major or not, Aozaki hasn't really taken a life yet. Or hasn't actually taken a life yet, has she? Alice looked up quietly at the sudden question. She had been inspecting Sojiro's meal, but now she looked straight at him. That's a rather odd question, Shizuki. I know. I hate to ask you, but it's just not something I feel comfortable asking Aozaki directly. If you don't want to answer, you don't have to. Alice didn't respond. Sojiro resumed eating, not seeming disappointed, and Alice stared blankly at him, slurping his noodles. After much hesitation, she replied, "No. Just like you said, Aoko hasn't killed anyone yet. She's been involved in that sort of thing multiple times, though." Alice's response was slow and measured. He's troubled, but not at the conversation they were having. Rather, he looked apologetic towards Alice. He said she didn't have to answer if she didn't want to, but Alice kept talking despite the face he was making. That day you saw us in the park was the first time Aoko had ever killed anything. That was just a puppet, though. Alright. Eyeing him suspiciously. It almost seems like you knew all of this from the beginning. They've upgraded to full sentences, like full conversations. This is really good. This is really good progress. She just says stuff like that sometimes, but it's never felt like she's ever actually killed anyone before. But more than that, I guess the best evidence is the fact that you're still alive. Sojiro chuckled at Alice's stellar response. Exactly. Things would have been more clear-cut that night if Aoko had actually killed someone before. Sojiro would have been dead before he ever even saw her face. For better or for worse, Aoko remained inexperienced in spite of her ruthlessness and decisiveness. Sojiro relaxed his shoulders. His stern face gradually returned to its normal, carefree state. Then, none of that really matters. That's just the way she is. She acts with reason and uses her knowledge to make up for any inexperience she might have. Yeah, she is kind of goated like that. She's got the knowledge, and she's definitely got the talent. The power, I should say. Like a battery. I think if she really felt like it, she could take another person's life, as you put it. And with that, Alice went back to twirling noodles around her fork. She looks like she's having fun, Sojiro thought as he ruminated over what she just said. She was rational enough to accept herself despite acting against society's morals and possessed of an intellect that exceeded even the confidence gained through experience. Had Aoko been raised to utilize her logic and reason to forge reality from fiction? What a crazy line, by the way. If that was the case, then perhaps they really were different from Sojiro. I'm sorry. Can you please not tell Aozaki that I asked you this? Sojiro seemed serious, as if he really regretted asking. Alice's expression remained unchanged, but she had never intended on saying anything to Aoko anyway. Thank you. I'm not sure why, but I seem to have a lot of secret conversations with you. Oh! Sojiro went back to eating his food. Though Alice had still only had a single bite, he was already scraping his clean. I already asked Aozaki this, but do the two of you always get along like that? Sojiro had suddenly decided to change the topic of conversation. His new topic was the rather cold and dry relationship between Aoko and Alice. Aoko said the relationship was normal, but maybe Alice had a different opinion. If you're talking about how we rarely talk to each other, that's just what happens. It's convenient. It isn't something that bothers us. Alice was still twirling noodles with her fork as she gave her concise answer. Around and around the noodles went, but none made it into her mouth. What do you mean, it's convenient? Do you mean that you're friends? Would it make things difficult for you if we didn't get along? Sojiro swallowed his words at Alice's perplexed reply. It would, actually, but he wasn't trying to respond when asked so directly. No, maybe I was just thinking about it the wrong way. I promise I won't bring it up again, so just forget I asked. More importantly, Alice, Soldier gave Alice a piercing stare that was more intense than any time they talked before. Alice was taken slightly back at the unusually intense look in his eyes. Her face became slightly flushed out of nervousness. Nobody besides Aoko had ever stared at her like this before. Look at her big ol' eyes. Whether or not he noticed, Sojiro waited a few moments before speaking slowly and with complete conviction. I gotta stop doing this. I gotta stop expecting that Sojiro is gonna say something normal. Whenever they build something up like this, whenever they're like, oh yeah, this is like intense and it's not normal, it's far from the norm of how they usually interact, he just says shit like this. If you're not going to eat that, do you mind if I have it? And she's just like, she thinks he's gonna, God, I don't know what she thinks he's gonna do. And then they always do this. Oh my God. They cut it. It's like a sitcom gag. An awkward silence followed. This is mine. Shizuki had cooked it, sure, but Alice wasn't wrong. He had made it for her, after all. There was a slight tinge of anger in her voice, but even she wasn't sure why it was there. You're right. Sorry, I shouldn't have asked. Sojiro plopped himself down on the sofa. This must have looked particularly pathetic to Alice, and she responded with, are there any ingredients left to cook some more? She quickly covered her mouth. Apparently she had surprised even herself. It was quite unusual for her to ask something like that. Nope, I used everything and made some for Aozaki as well. Sojiro stared a bit regretfully at Alice's plate as he responded. Alice could have just let it go, but for some reason she felt the need to speak up again. But Aoko's still sleeping. Yeah, but I'm gonna wake her up soon, and she'd have told me to make her something anyway. Speaking of which, it's almost 1 o'clock. I'll go and wake her up now. Didn't she say she'd kill you if you woke her up? Alice wasn't sure why Sojiro was willing to take such a risk. What is this? This developing dynamic between the two of them is so interesting. I feel like if I don't wake her up now, she's going to end up killing me later anyway. His words were surprisingly affectionate. Leaving Alice with only that, Sojiro headed to Aoko's room. Took another bite. Glancing to make sure that nobody was coming, took another bite. She repeated that process many times before finishing her food. It was then that she heard Aoko's wrath coming from the second floor. Oh, she's clearing the table because she never really expected to feel this way. But he cooked for her, and it was surprisingly good. Almost enough to make her forget how bad he was at making tea. Oh, that's our chapter. Oh my God, I love it. That's our chapter. And we got a new book for the archives. What is it called? We've got, where is this? So we've got to do whiteboard. Yes, and then we have to do the Carnegie case. So this was chapter 8, and then this is chapter 8.5. So we'll be doing that in the next video, but all right, fellas. Jeez. It's so fun and goofy. I don't got much to say about that other than that I just want to keep going and get through this game to see why people like it so much. I'm already seeing it now, but I want to see when it gets really intense. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I definitely did, and I will see you guys in the next video. So for now, have a good rest of your day, and I will see you soon. Bye!